Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a My Two Cent video, Nintendo/gaming video for this week, for the week of June 7th to the 13th, and we got 5 stories to cover, or at least 4, and one of a game that I'm going to give an early impression of at this time, though. That will be the Switch versions of the Outer Worlds. I'm going to give my early impressions of what I think about the game so far, and why I'm kind of opposed to some of the comments of people saying that doesn't believe that every game should be ported over to the Nintendo Switch. I also want to talk a little bit about the PS5 event and what they showed off, and we finally got a chance to see the console, and in all honesty, I think it's weird. Not in a bad way, but just weird in general, though. I also wanted to talk about basically Bloodstained and some of the comments that they have recently made and how the game has so far surpassed 1 million copies and what the roadmap is ahead for that game, to be exact. Full disclosure, I am one of the backers of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night when that campaign started on Kickstarter back in 2015. I also want to talk about Monolith Soft and some of the comments they made in terms of what they're going to be doing in terms of small-scale projects to the future of Xenoblade Chronicles in general. And supposedly we are learning about a new Metal Slug game, though, and I want to give my thoughts on that one. But before we get started, I do want to do what I view as the quick rundown on what I call the quick My Two Cent part. And while these may not be what may not be the big 5 that I'm going to be talking about, they're still worth taking a look at. We do know that supposedly there will be an event, let's see, probably tomorrow, although this video will probably go up on Saturday. It will be Saturday when this video goes up, that there will be supposedly a report about a Persona 4 Golden coming to PC. And while that may be great, obviously for PC fans who may be looking forward to it, Nintendo fans, including Switch owners, are reacting to it, feeling like Aulx is kind of ignoring them and so forth. And I kind of agree with them to a certain degree. I think Aulx is, really missing an opportunity to bring a lot of their games to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, there's an audience there that would love to play some of their games, including Persona 5s, but you know what? That's Aulx's decision. We know we're getting Kathlina, if I'm saying the name correctly, full body edition, and who knows if that does well enough, maybe that will convince Aulx. But yeah, like EA, I think they're missing out on an opportunity to reach out to a certain audience and all that stuff. We also learned about the launch date, right, for Cyberpunk 2077, which, if last time it was reported, it will be coming out on September 17th. Now, barring any major delays or anything like that, it seems that's going to be the launch date. However, it's reported that the Google Stadia version will be, shall we say, coming out at a later date. Supposedly, they're saying before the end of the year and all that stuff. Not everyone is, or at least Google Stadia owners are not exactly happy about that, though. You know, I can understand the disappointment, but having like a Nintendo Switch where we've seen versions of other games come out at a later date and all that stuff, Dark Souls Remaster is a good example of that. Doom Eternal, as of right now, is also. So, yes, it sucks. I can understand why people are disappointed, though, but it is what it is. I mean, some of that could fall on Google's side of the situation and all that. We also learned that Kingdom of Amalur: Reckoning, this was a game released back during the 360 and PS3 era, and it had the whole 3A Studios, Rhode Island, and Kurt Schilling, if I'm saying the name correctly, and the whole controversy that has happened, and it looks like it's getting a second chance, courtesy of THQ Nordic. Right now, we know it's coming to the PS4 and Xbox One, and I believe PC as well. No word on the Nintendo Switch version at this time, but I would love to see it come to Nintendo Switch. I definitely think that would be a great game to bring to that system, but obviously that's THQ Nordic's decision, so we'll have to see. But as of right now, it looks like that game's going to be coming to the PS4 and Xbox One. We also have a release date for Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, and as of right now, it's aiming for a release date of August 27th for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, ISO devices, and Android. And supposedly this will have cross-play in it, so I'm a little curious of how this one's going to play out. I remember playing a little bit of it on the Nintendo GameCube, and that was like a long, long time ago. And if this one does well enough, maybe, although I'm curious how it would work, but maybe they could port over Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, the Crystal Barrier, over to the maybe for the other platforms, the Nintendo Switch and all that stuff. I mean, for the Switch, they could take advantage of the Joy-Cons in terms of the motion controls to traditional controls as well. So we'll have to wait and see if that ever happens. But right now, the first one, Crystal Chronicles, is coming over. The first one's come over. We also learned that Stadia may have leaked supposedly gameplay footage on their store of Ubisoft's God and Monsters. That was supposed to come out in February, but it got delayed, mostly because after Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint failed or did poorly in terms of sales, Ubisoft had to re-examine a lot of things, and God and Monsters was certainly one of those games, though. But supposedly the leak was based off the E3 2019 build, and right now Google Stadia had to apologize and all that stuff. Not a great thing for them to add, though. I am curious to see how that game is going to look, especially on the Nintendo Switch, since it was announced on the Switch. I mean, it did sound promising. The art style looked kind of neat, and I like the idea. It looked like it was made from the same folks who did Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but take a bit of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So I'm very curious to see how it plays and all that stuff. Hopefully, and this is from a Nintendo fan standpoint, hopefully the Switch version isn't canceled or anything like that, but we'll have to wait and see. And last but certainly not least, though, we do have a launch date for, or supposedly a retail leak for, although the trailer has came out, though, and that is that 13, basically a stylish first-person shooter that was released back on the original Xbox, PS2, and the GameCube era, though, is basically making a comeback. It was supposed to come out last year, but got delayed for some reason. But according to supposedly a leaked, or supposedly what is the official launch date, it's supposed to aim for November 10th, and will be coming to the PC, PS4, Xbox One, and the Nintendo Switch. I never played 13, but it is something that caught my attention, and I'm looking forward to trying that one out, especially the Nintendo Switch version. That one I'm looking forward to. I mean, I like the whole idea of, playing at home and bringing it on the go. So I'm going to keep an eye on that one and see how that one plays out. Okay, with the quick My 2 Cent part now done, we'll get started with our first story. And this one has to do with the run and gun 2D shooter series, Metal Slug. Now, growing up back in, the 80s and 90s, there were a lot of, run and gun games that were released back then. The two that I remember playing are the Contra series and the Metal Slug series. And I've always enjoyed, the Metal Slug series, even when, back in the day when the arcade games existed, though, you would see those SNK, cabinets that have multiple games on it, and one of those I would look for, of course, is the Metal Slug series, with Metal Slug 3 being my all-time favorite, though. SNK in general has had its ups and downs, but we've seen them kind of make a bit of a resurgence. Recently, they released the latest King of Fighter games, to the latest Samurai Showdown that has been released, supposedly running on Unreal Engine 4. And now we're hearing reports of basically that SNK is going to be releasing a brand new Metal Slug game, not only for mobile devices, which we've seen a lot of the games have come to mobile devices, which not everyone seems to be a fan of, but we're also going to be seeing it coming to consoles as well. In an article from GameSpot, it reads that, quote, Metal Slug is returning to console and mobiles this year with 2 new games. The article reads, and I quote, Metal Slug SNK long-rolling scrolling shooter series is due to make a comeback in 2020. The Korean site Inveen, INVEN, has said that the SNK CEO has announced that the series will release new games on consoles and mobiles this year. The new console Metal Slug will reportedly be a traditional action experience, much like past entries in the series. The mobile title, which is approximately 80% along in development will be a card-type mobile game. It is being developed for ISO and Android. Both games are in development at SNK. The report also suggests that a third game, also for mobile, is being developed at TMI Studio, a subsidy of Tencent, which a lot of games have heard that name, but for not great reasons or anything like that. Not a very negative reason, though. No screens or further details are available for any of these games at this time. The mobile games, I'm not really a huge fan of. That one I might more likely will skip. But the console version, that's something I'm looking forward to. I'm very curious to see what kind of direction they're going to go with this one. They're saying it's going to be a run and gun, so obviously it will probably take the traditional route. But I'm curious in terms of the graphics and the style. Will it maintain that art style that the Metal Slug series is well known for? Or will it take the approach of what we've seen in the latest King of Fighters game and the Samurai Showdown, going with that kind of approach and all that stuff? And I'm curious to see what kind of platform will it be on. I assume it's going to come to the Nintendo Switch, but again, no official announcement has been made. But would it also basically use the art style of, say, like what this year's Streets of Rage 4 used? Will it have that kind of art style? So there's still some questions to be asked, but I will say overall, I am pleased that they're bringing another Metal Slug game, though. Whether this is Metal Slug 8 or a reboot of it, who knows? But we'll have to wait and see. But like I said, great that they're bringing Metal Slug back. And I'm looking forward to seeing the game in action again. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 2. And this one has to do with Monolith Soft and some comments they made in regards of ranging from small-scale projects to the future for Xenoblade Chronicles. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Monolith Soft and some comments they made in regards of the future of, like their company in terms of projects and basically the future of Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, I'm sure most of you are aware, recently they have just released the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, a sort of updated version of the original Xenoblade Chronicles that released on the Wii, a game that North America was originally not going to get. This was a game that a lot of fans here in North America pushed to bring over here though to bring over here though. Despite Nintendo of America saying at this time they had no plans to bring it over. This led to the whole situation of Operation Rainfall. The idea was to bring over not only Xenoblade Chronicles, but The Last Story and Pandora's Tower as well. And it was successful. This is one of those rare occasions where I do side with the fandom on this one. And I'm glad that they pushed to convince Nintendo of America to bring these games over. And I really think it was foolish for Nintendo of America to originally not think they shouldn't bring this game over. And despite some of the controversy, such as the whole GameStop issue of selling the game and all that stuff in terms of allegations that they opened it and then sell it as used and all that stuff, and despite it being only exclusive at GameStop and at the Nintendo World Store in New York City, the game definitely garnished an audience and did well. This led to the release of Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Wii U, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, which acted as sort of a launch title for the Nintendo Switch, and now we're getting seen Xenoblade Chronicles the Definitive Edition, a remaster of the first one, basically doing very well. And it seems as though Monolith right now is sort of focused on the Xenoblade Chronicle brand, at least at this moment, though. In an article from Destructoid, it reads that, quote, Monolith is extremely busy. What's once started as a low-key RPG house has grown into a giant with multiple development teams. We don't necessarily have the time to dedicate to fight of fancy projects. Series director Tasahaki apologize if I'm not saying the name correctly though, seems to feel the same way, as he just recently spoke to Vandal, Vandal, about how much the Xenoblade series means to them now and how it's tough to divert their attention elsewhere. Speaking frankly, he started that he liked to do small-scale projects if the opportunity arose, but right now their focus of the company is to increase the value of the brand that they have created with the Xenoblade Chronicles saga. He further goes on to say that if they manage to organize themselves in a way that allows us to do so, it could happen. But for right now, all eyes are on Xenoblade, which has hosted 3 proper main entry series, multiple remakes, and 1 big DLC expansion to date. He also commented a bit on present matter, such as why Melina, Melia, was chosen to assist Shulk in the new definitive eulogy or epilogue. He explained that because she evolved such a fierce amount of empathy from the people who played the original, she was a perfect emissary, Emissary. Not to mention, she was one of the more complex party members of the bunch when it came to her backstory. He also said that the epilogue map, Bionic Shoulder, was partially a test map for the Wii edition, and that the decision to restrict party members were deliberated, so everyone gets the attention they deserve. He also mentioned that the use of the Nopon, Nopon race, are the mascots of the Xenoblade universe, so they have to make it in, as they are part of the essential of the series though. While he is busy, he seems to have a ton of passion for the series and is at least doing what he loves. So obviously that Monolith would love to do a lot of small scale projects and all that stuff, and I can understand that. I mean, there are certain games, they worked on several games like Disaster, Day of Crisis, that never saw the release over here, to other games as well, and I would love for them to do some of their small scale projects though, outside of Xenoblade and all that stuff. But at the same time, I'm glad that they are doing what they can to, really make Xenoblade Chronicles series a really good series and all that stuff. And it really is a very good series. And for me, I'm starting to see Xenoblades kind of going down the route very similar to the Fire Emblem route, another IP from Nintendo. What was once considered, maybe a niche title and all that stuff, and maybe on the way out, it started with Fire Emblem Awakening, which did very well, and it sort of brought life back to the series, though. Followed up by Fire Emblem Fates, I think Fire Emblem Echoes. We've also had, like Fire Emblem Heroes, the mobile game, Fire Emblem Warriors, and Fire Emblem Three Houses, which did very well, and that's now Nintendo is starting to realize that has now started to become a stable and important IP to, to Nintendo, and I'm starting to see something very similar with Xenoblade Chronicles, as that is starting to become a very important IP for Nintendo as well. And to think that Nintendo of America was not going to have this game here in North America, which, like I said, I think that was a pretty dumb move with them. So I will say, overall, I wouldn't mind them working on some small-scale projects. I would love for them to do some smaller stuff as well. Take maybe somewhat of a break from Xenoblade Chronicles, but I want to see the Xenoblade Chronicles series continue. It is a very important IP for them and Nintendo, and I would like to see this IP, evolve and so forth. I certainly would be open to a Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and I hope that we do see Xenoblade Chronicles 3 one day, but I wouldn't be against basically a port or remastered, port or remaster of Xenoblade Chronicles X. I mean, if the original Xenoblade Chronicles could get a definitive edition, I don't see why Xenoblade Chronicles X can't do that. I know they said that money would be an issue, but if seeing how well definitive edition is doing so far, I'm hoping that convinced them. Also, Nintendo, I know you may or may not listen to this, but I would love to see a remaster or a remake or a sequel to Last Story and Pandora's Tower. That's definitely something I would like to see. So, like I said, I would love to see them do small-scale projects, but I am not against them trying to continue and evolve the Xenoblade Chronicles series in general. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 3. And this one has to do with Bloodstained, and apparently what the future holds for that game and series as well. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 3 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, I want to talk about Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and the game seems to be, the developers are giving a thank you to the folks who have purchased the game, as it seems to have done very well for them. Now, before I get started talking about Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, I do want to give a full disclosure. I may have said this at the beginning, but in case you missed it though, what I want to say is, I am one of the folks who did back the game when it was announced back on Kickstarter. Back in the day, I think that was back in 2015 and all. So any opinions of Bloodstained Ritual Night are based on my opinions and my opinions alone, as I'm not being endorsed, paid, or sponsored by the developers or the publishers in any way. So full disclosure on that, just wanted to get that out. Now, Bloodstained, I will say, in terms of its history, in terms of being released and all that stuff, had somewhat of a rocky history in a way, though. While I won't say it was on the same level as, say, like what Mighty Number 9 was, which was a complete and utter debacle, though, there were certainly some decisions that not everyone liked or agree with, ranging from changing some of the art styles to basically the Nintendo Switch version, how some people had issues with that version and all. And while I've played the Switch version, and while it's not as awful as some people say it is, it's clearly not as good as, say, what the PS4, the Xbox One, and PC version. And obviously, the developers admitted that they clearly dropped the ball and didn't think people were going to pay attention to that. And when the Switch version did well, they decided to figure, oh crap, we got to fix this then. Yeah, and I think was a very big mistake and all that stuff. Despite that, though, despite some of the controversies or some of the issues people may have had, it seems as though the game did sit well with a lot of folks, and apparently has sold over 1 million copies worldwide. In an article from GameSpot, it reads that, quote, it reads, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is getting more DLCs. Sales surpass 1 million. The sales milestone is good news for those invested in Koji Hirigare. Again, I apologize, I'm not saying it correctly. Latest Metroidvania. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, the latest Metroidvania game from Castlevania Symphony of the Night producer, has now sold over 1 million copies. Inigara, Igarashi, again, I apologize if I'm not saying it correctly, released a video thanking players and fans from around the world who have played the new IP, as well as all the people who had contributed to its development and publishing. The producer said this sales milestone was the overall goal set internally, letting developers on additional free updates and DLC continue without the worries of having to break even. Ritual of the Night will be receiving more free updates throughout the year, with some arriving over the next few weeks. In a blog post on the official website, a timeline laid out free update schedule for the rest of the year, including new game modes, playable characters, and more. They point out what it is. It looks like the second quarter is going to have Boss Revenge mode, the CHROMA wheel. Third quarter will have Chaos mode, Verse mode, special crossover content, Classic mode, and fourth quarter will have a special crossover content and a mystery playable character. In addition to free content update, the post also mentioned that Bloodstained will be getting paid DLC in the future too. Developer Artplay and Way Forward aren't detailing what this might entail, but the producer said that the sale milestone allows developer to move into a second chapter, suggesting support for Ritual of the Night will continue for quite some time. The game was well received by critics, especially since it was a spiritual successor to what many view as like the best Castlevania mode out there. It's worth pointing out that some of the features, though, while Boss Revenge and Chroma, Chroma Leo, will launch on PC, PS4, and Xbox One on Tuesday, June 23rd. The Nintendo Switch version, those who own the Switch will have to wait until July for that. But other than that, it seems the other stuff such as Chaos, Verse Mode, Classic Mode, and the playable character will still be, it looks like for now, it will be released alongside with the other version. So, seemed that for one part, for one of the parts though, Switch owners will have to wait until July, but it looks like the other parts will have to, the other ones, it sounds like they'll get it along with the other versions when that comes out in the third quarter and the fourth quarter of 2020. I will have to say I'm glad the game is doing very well indeed. It is nice to see the granddaddy or the grandfather of the creator of the whole Metroidvania genre, seeing his own, the fruit of his labor become a success and everything like that. Like I said, there were some controversies along the way, but I'm glad the game is doing very well. I'm glad that we're getting some free DLC and free content update, which is certainly nice, and I'm glad that, but it'll be interesting to see what the paid DLCs though. The one company outside of them that does this very similar was The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and I thought that was handled properly when it came to DLC, offer free content update for a lot of folks, and then offer paid DLC that's worth their money and all that stuff. So I think this is good, but I am curious to see if we are going to see something like, say, a Bloodstained.to. I would love to see something like that. And hopefully, if a Bloodstained.to does happen, hopefully if it does come to Nintendo Switch, which I think it should, I'm hoping that lessons were learned in terms of development of the first one on the Nintendo Switch, and that they don't drop the ball or treat it as an afterthought and actually put some time and effort into the Switch version. So overall, glad Bloodstained is doing very well. I'm glad that it's getting more love and more content, some free, some paid and all that stuff. But at the same time though, I do hope that during the development, lessons were learned, especially with the Nintendo Switch version as well. And I do hope that at some point, I would love to see a Bloodstained.to. I certainly would like to see that happen. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 3. And this one has to do with the PlayStation 5. We finally get to see the console itself and some of the games coming during this PlayStation 5 event. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 4 of our My 2 Cent video, and for this one, I want to talk about the PlayStation 5, or the PS5 event that happened on Thursday, though. So, after months and months of waiting, Sony started to spill a bit more information about the PlayStation 5, and we finally got a chance to see the console itself, and we also finally got to see some of the games that some are in development and some are planning to come out during the launch of the PlayStation 5. Now, as far as the console, how it actually looks and all that stuff, all I'm going to say is that it looks a bit weird. The whole way that it's shaped, I think it's kind of like this and all that stuff. I'm very curious to see what it looks like in the actual size, and will fit if I put it in a tight spot or anything like that, especially downstairs in my living room. Two, I'm very curious to see how it will look if you hold it sideways. It's just, the whole design just looks weird and all that stuff. But, not in a negative way or anything like that. We've seen memes about people saying, this is almost looks like a fan-made, what the PS4 or the PS3 looked like back in the day and all that stuff. So, I could kind of see that, though. But still, like I said, it's weird, but not in a negative way. On top of that, we're getting a digital version. So one version will have, you can use physical media, while one version doesn't. The one with the physical media, the one I'm more leaning towards, almost looks like it kind of sticks out a little bit more than the digital version does. But in either way, it looks weird, but it still looks slick, and I am definitely looking forward to, seeing the system with my own eyes and all that stuff. So, while the system may look weird and all that stuff, Sony's presentation for the whole PS5 and what they're bringing over certainly was actually very good, and it looks like they kind of avoided some of the mistakes Microsoft had with their presentation, which was basically they were talking about they were going to show gameplay, but only showed like cutscenes and so forth, or just announcement trailers that weren't really gameplay that kind of forced them to apologize and all that stuff. Hopefully they learned their lesson on that one, and when they have their presentation of mostly first-party games in July, hopefully they get that one right. But in the meantime, what Sony showed, some of them were gameplay and some of them weren't, but it was still very impressive. The games that kind of stood out for me the most, I would say, is the Spider-Man Miles Morales. That one looks really interesting. I've heard some back and forths. I mean, some claim it's a sequel, some claim it's not. I still have to figure that one out, but I definitely am looking forward to that one. Spider-Man was a fun game on the PS4. It was definitely probably one of the best Spider-Man games since Spider-Man 2, which that was released back on the PS2, original Xbox and GameCube. That was a long time ago. The Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, that's definitely one I'm keeping an eye out for. I like 3D platforms and all that stuff, so that's definitely one I want to try out as well. Sony, why aren't you not giving us a new Jak and Daxter or Sly Cooper? I think most of us would love to see that happen. And also, not to mention, another Dark Cloud and another Rogue Galaxy would be nice as well. The one from Square Enix, Project Athia, still have to see more about that one, though, so I will have to keep an eye on that one. That was from the Luminous production. If they're using the Luminous engine, hopefully it works better on the PS5 than they did on the PS4. Some people had claimed there were issues with that. Sackboy from Little Big Planet is getting his own game in basically a platform. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Yoshi's Crafted World and all that stuff, or Yoshi's Woolly World, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And like I said, I'm a big fan of platformers, so that one is definitely one I'm going to keep an eye out for. Other ones, Demon Souls, remake of the original PlayStation 3 version. That's one I'm definitely will try out. Maybe Blueprint will improve in some areas, though. I mean, maybe hopefully they're getting help from FromSoft that are pointing out what areas they could do to improve upon it and take elements that people liked from the Dark Souls games and so forth. So that certainly is nice. Arcane from Bethesda, the Deathloop. That one looks kind of interesting and one I will definitely be keeping an eye out for. That one I want to try out, though. Resident Evil 8, we didn't really see much gameplay in that one, though. Maybe a little bit or something like that, but I didn't really see anything like that. But I am getting a Resident Evil 4 vibe to it, and that certainly is not a bad thing at all. So I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for that one. One area I would like for them to do, and I know some Resident Evil fans will disagree with me on this, is that I really think they should ditch the item box. I'm not a big fan of the item box. I mean, I'll tolerate it, but I'm not really a big fan of it. I prefer what they did in Resident Evil 4 in terms of, how Leon had his own, his backpack with all the items and all that stuff. I prefer that approach over the item box. I'm hoping they bring that back, and I'm hoping they expand upon that in a certain way, so we'll have to wait and see about that, but I am keeping an eye out for Resident Evil 8. There's no doubt the Resident Evil series has made a comeback. I think Resident Evil 7 kind of helped revive it, so great on that one as well. Horizon Forbidden West, the sequel to Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that's great. That one looks gorgeous. I still have to see some actual gameplay, so we'll still have to wait for that one, but I am looking forward to that one. I did enjoy Horizon Zero Dawn. That one definitely it felt like it had a little bit of elements from the Zelda series, which certainly is not a bad thing or anything like that, though. Other games like Oddworld, I never played an Oddworld game before, so I'll keep an eye on that one and take a look at that one as well. I will say the two games that I thought were, I think, one disappointment, one I have to see more of, and I can see why people are mixed of, is Ghostwire Tokyo. That game apparently, there were some issues behind the scenes, especially where one of the folks who worked on it left Tango Games and all that stuff, and there were concerns about what's happening with that one. Based on the trailer, though, I still have to see a little bit more. I'm intrigued, but there's more that I would have to see. The one I would say would probably be a disappointment would be Grand Theft Auto 5, though. Now, just for clarity, I'm not saying Grand Theft Auto 5 is a bad game or an awful game. It's still a good game, but I can't help but feel that Grand Theft Auto 5 is slowly, and to some degree Resident Evil 4, favorite entry in the Resident Evil series, but I can't help but feel that it's starting to turn into basically what Skyrim is. It's like they'll just release like that version for the new consoles and all that stuff. I mean, one person's making a joke in the comment section of, I think one of the sites I go to saying, PlayStation 6, Grand Theft Auto 5 is going to be there. So, I mean, again, we'll see. I mean, maybe they'll make some improvements and all that stuff, but we'll see. That one I might get if I do decide to get it, I'll probably get it at a later date and all that stuff. So, not really the big thing and all that stuff. But overall, I do have to say, a lot of the games that they showed were very impressive, though. I'm very curious to see what games they will have available at launch. There are two things about the PlayStation 5 that they didn't mention in this presentation that I'm hoping maybe down the road before we get closer to launch they'll address. One is going to be the storage space. I'm very curious to see how do you expand the storage space and so forth. I mean, especially if you're planning to get the digital version, you know, the one with 0 disk drive, how that's going to work. So there is still a little bit a question. Are there ways to expand it? If so, how do you expand it, to be exact? So there are certain questions about that. And of course, there's going to be the price point. How much is this going to cost? And I'm concerned, given the current situation that we are right now with the economy not in a great position at this time, not to mention the whole issue with the coronavirus, I do wonder how much this is going to cost, and whether or not we're going, whether or not you're going to see people line up for it, because, like I said, coronavirus has kind of changed a lot of things lately, though. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this, along with Xbox One Series X, launches, which we also don't have a price, though. But it is kind of interesting. I also heard that it's kind of interesting that they released the digital version, yet we haven't seen the Lockhart version from Microsoft or anything like that. So overall, very good presentation for them. There are certainly some games on there that I definitely am keeping an eye out and will definitely try, though. As for the system itself, again, it looks weird, but you know what? It started to grow on me, and you know what? I'm not losing sleep over it, though, but I do want to see the actual size myself with my own eyes and everything like that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 5. And this one is, I want to give my early impressions and thoughts on the Outer Worlds for the Nintendo Switch. So we'll take a quick break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with our 5th and final part of our My 2 Cent video for this week. And for this one, I want to give my thoughts or early impressions of the Outer Worlds that just recently came out to the Nintendo Switch. Now, for those who are not familiar, though, or those who may be new to my channel or anything like that, the Outer Worlds recently came out back in 2019, though. And during my top 10 PS4 games of 2019, I ranked that one as my number 1 game. It was fun and all that stuff. It was basically Fallout without the Fallout name in any way, though. The world itself was just fascinating to explore. The gameplay was just enjoyable and all that stuff. It really put, Fallout 76 to shame, which that game has gotten a lot of criticisms, and I think a lot of them was justifiable, though. So it was interesting when it was announced after after Fallout came out on the PS4 and Xbox One and PC, that we would be getting a version for the Nintendo Switch, and that kind of surprised me a little bit about it, though. But at the same time, I was also very curious and excited to see how this game would run on the Nintendo Switch. Now, we've heard about how the game was originally supposed to come out in May as a digital only version, or a version with just, like a card in an empty box, but that game got delayed due to the staff had to deal with the issue with the whole coronavirus situation and all that stuff, which, while unfortunate that the game didn't come out in May, it was understandable. The health and safety of these employees were more important than getting the game out on a release date and all that stuff. And now the game has finally came out, and the response for a lot of people have been pretty mixed, though. I think there are some who don't think the game looks awful or plays terrible. Others are, using this as a rally call for why not every game should be ported over to the Nintendo Switch. Now, I've invested several times into the game, though. I do have some gameplay footage. The link will be in the description. You could check it out yourself. This one, it's early in the game, mostly around where I'm in, like Edgewater and so forth, though. And honestly, I have to say this so far. My early impression right now is that while this version will not appeal to everyone, though, it's not as awful as the internet makes it sound or anything like that. The core experience is still there in the game, though, and it still plays very well. I mean, visually speaking, it's not the best looking game out there, but it's not as awful as many people make it out to be, though. I mean, I've played 2016 Doom on the Nintendo Switch. I played Wolfenstein 2, the New Colossus on the Nintendo Switch. I've played Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on the Nintendo Switch, and while those games are not visually great or anything like that, they're not as awful as some people make it out to be. And this is the same view I have with the Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch. From a visual standpoint, though, it's not as awful. It's not terrible. I can live with the fact that I'm not getting the best looking version or anything like that, but I understand it's not the prettiest version and all, but I'm not losing sleep over the whole visuals, and I do think some people are kind of blowing it way out of proportion. As far as performance goes, performance-wise, it still plays well and all that stuff. There are some minor hiccups, though. Where I see some of the performance issues, though, I've seen it where basically when you're in town, the frame rate kind of takes a hit a little bit, though. Doesn't make the game unplayable, but it is noticeable, but eventually it returns to normal and all that stuff. So mostly where I see the frame rate dip is mostly in the towns, but once you go outside into like the world and all, it's not as bad as it is when you're in town, though. There are occasions where if you do run, the screen has to load a bit, but I've only seen that happen to me like twice so far, and that's it. Though I have to get a little further into the game to figure it out, though. But as far as performance go, I haven't seen anything outside of what I mentioned. Nothing in terms of that makes the game unplayable or anything where the game crashed or kicked me out or anything like that. So it still plays well and all that stuff. It's not perfect, but it still plays fine, at least based on my time with it. So I will say my early impressions is that it's not perfect. It's not going to be the version for everyone out there, but it's not as awful as some on the internet makes it sound like it is, though. It certainly isn't. It isn't terrible. In fact, if I had to describe it, though, I would say it's the Spacer's Choice version, though. It's not the best choice, it's Spacer's Choice. That's pretty much how I would sum it up. As for the recent comments I've been hearing, how some people are making the claim that not every game should be ported over to the Nintendo Switch and are using the Outer Worlds as one of the reasons, though, I have to respectfully disagree with that argument, though. I think it shows that the Switch is capable of running these games, though, but some of it is going to be based on the expectation. Some of it is going to be on the consumer side, and some of it will be on the developer side as well. I mean, look at a game like, say, Dragon Quest 11. That was released on the PS4 and PC, and it later came to the Nintendo Switch. Granted, the Switch version doesn't look as good as the PC or the PS4 version, but the core experience is still there, and it doesn't look as bad. It's not perfect, but it's not as awful as a lot of people say it is. Others have complained about the Unreal Engine 4, which I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about that one. While I'm not a game developer or anything like that, I've seen games that run on Unreal Engine 4, and I don't see really any major problems with it. Games like Octopath Traveler, very good RPG if you have a Nintendo Switch, or PC, or if you're playing it on Stadia to be exact. It's worth taking a look at that game to be exact. That runs on Unreal Engine 4, and to me, that runs fine on the Nintendo Switch. Some of it could be on the developer side that they poorly optimize their game or don't do a good job with it. I think Ark Survivor Evolve is a good example of that, or Rhyme, though. But I've seen games that run on Unreal Engine 4 that actually run fine on the Nintendo Switch. So some of it will be the optimization and all that stuff, but I don't personally think it's the engine or anything like that. In fact, we know that Unreal Engine 5 supposedly will work for the Nintendo Switch, and obviously games that are using that Unreal Engine 5 that come to the Nintendo Switch, obviously there's going to be some changes to it to make sure it runs properly on the Nintendo Switch and so forth. But I mean, I don't think the engine is the problem, and I'm not 100% certain that the engine is the problem or anything like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with developers bringing their games over to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, if there is a way you could bring your PS5 game over to the Nintendo Switch, or, PS5 or Xbox One Series X game, that's great. I'm glad that it comes to the Nintendo Switch. Now, are there going to be some changes to it? Yes. Obviously, visually, it's not going to look as good as what you see on the PS5 or the Xbox One, or even PC for that matter. That I get. I'm fully understanding that. I'm setting my expectations on that one, though. But if you could get the core experience and have it run at a stable, steady frame rate, though, I mean, that's fine. I mean, would it be great if they could get it to run at 60 frames per second? Yes, and there are some games it's possible to get running at 60 frames per second, but if 30 frames per second is the best that they can do, fine. As long as it's a stable 30 frames per second, that's fine. But as long as they can handle that and get the core experience of it on the Nintendo Switch, then that is fine with me. So I reject this argument that not every game should come to the Nintendo Switch. As long as it's optimized properly, as long as you get a stable frame rate, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the visuals not looking as good as what you would see on the PS5 or Xbox Series X or PC, as long as it's presentable and all. So overall, I would say my impressions of the Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch right now is that, like I said before, it's not perfect, but it's not as awful as the internet makes it sound like it is. And I outright reject the argument of saying why people are using the Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch as a reason of not every game should come to the Nintendo Switch. I know some people may have a different view on that, but I stand behind that. Okay, this concludes this My 2 Cent video for this week. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about SNK releasing a new Metal Slug game this year for both console and mobile devices? Are you looking forward to the new Metal Slug game, though? Do you think they'll shake anything up with the formula, though? Are you looking forward to the console version? Are you looking forward to the mobile version? Are you looking forward to both, or one or the other? What are your thoughts about some of the comments about Monolith Soft has made in terms of the future of Xenoblade Chronicles series and, small-scale projects? Would you like them to work on small-scale projects? Do you want them to focus heavily on Xenoblade Chronicles? Do you think they should get started with Xenoblade Chronicles 3? Or do you think that they should do a port or remaster of Xenoblade Chronicles X, or a actual sequel to Xenoblade Chronicles X? What are your thoughts about Bloodstained basically selling 1 million copies worldwide? Are you pleased that the game is doing very well, though? Are you looking forward to any of the DLCs that are coming out, both the free and the paid? Do you think they should get started with Bloodstained.to or do an actual sequel to it, though? Or do you think they prefer for them put more content into Bloodstained Ritual of the Night? what are your thoughts about the PS5 event? Did you like the event in any way? Do you think you think they did a better job than what Microsoft did with their event, though? Are there any games you're looking forward to when it comes out on the PS5? And what do you think about the design of it? Do you think it looks weird? Do you think it looks ugly? Or do you think you thought it is what it is, or you're not bothered with the design and all? And what are your thoughts about the Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch? Do you think it's as bad as the internet is making it sound like it is? Or do you think some people are just blowing it like way out of proportion? Have you played the Outer Worlds on the Nintendo Switch yet? What has your experience been with it though? And do you agree with people making the claim that not every game should be ported over to the Nintendo Switch? Or do you think a lot of people are blowing that way out of proportion? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that will be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day, and hopefully all of you are staying safe out there. Bye!